the Zimmer campaign always seemed like something that was an impossible dream. I remember after the first press conference that GEP joined CARE, a prominent local journalist came up to me and said, "Tom, you know you just made a fool of yourself." But the campaign succeeded. And I think there's some real lessons to be learned here. Zimmer was one of the early cases in my career, and it taught me some really significant lessons. One lesson is that there's nothing more powerful than the truth in a free society. And this campaign proved that to me for the rest of my life, my professional life. The other thing is that the truth won't matter without solidarity. I don't think Zimmer would have been stopped without the whistleblowers, but if it hadn't been for the community, the whistleblowers would have just been pissing in the wind. They would have just been retaliated against and had their lives destroyed. That would have been the impact of it. I don't think that Zimmer would have been stopped without the community, but without the truth as their weapon, the community would have ended up being frustrated. And so there are some lessons learned that I'd like to share today. They're kind of below the radar screen about the whistleblower effort. One is about Dave Jones and release of what I nicknamed the Zimmergate Papers. Dave was the chief auditor out at the power plant in the field. Auditor. And so he studied all the records, and he saw that the whole plant was a fraud from the very beginning. It was designed to be a fraud. It was intentionally a fraud. It was a strategy. And Dave's disclosure exposed all the papers of the history of the plant. It's kind of like he was kind of like the Daniel Ellsberg of nuclear whistleblowers. His disclosure ended up sparking congressional hearings, national media stories, national newspaper series, and investigative reports. It was the evidence for the petition that led to stopping construction of the plant in 1982. It was our key breakthrough in terms of evidence, the first key breakthrough. And how did we get it? Well, he just put everything in boxes and took it out to the loading dock and got some people to help him put it in his truck and go to the town carpenter's house. Never would have happened again. And then after we had all the evidence, we were using it effectively. CG&E wanted it all back. And they said, we're going to sue you if you don't give us this evidence back. And they said, well, I've given it all to Congress and they're investigating, and I've engaged in criminal obstruction of a congressional investigation. So why don't you just go ask Congress for the evidence back? Never could happen again. It did illustrate to me how important that process and that partnership is with each other. So I want to share a few examples of it besides Dave. Another one was the next big evidentiary breakthrough that we had. It's in 1983, and a gentleman from the Ohio Consumers Council, one of the lawyers there, called up. And we got 50 affidavits from workers at the plant. We had so many whistleblowers within the government. Especially from the NRC, and some of them became successful commercial lawyers and have told me my proudest moment was leaking those documents to you. But one of the Ohio Consumer Council people say you got to get this some evidence that I have. So I went up, and the evidence was Bechtel, for its comprehensive reinspection of the nuclear power plant, had already produced the results for every allegation that was before the NRC. And they were all accept as is before they looked. However, due to how long it was going to take them to prove that con, the interest rates were going to be skyrocketing, and the plant wasn't going to be making any money, and the cost of it was going to go from $1.7 billion to $2.8 to $4.5 billion. And it was a breakthrough to turn the politicians around in Cincinnati, that was for sure. And so I was so excited to have this study. I just kind of skimmed it. And I was driving back in Dave Jones' car. He'd loaned me his car. And I was so excited to get back to Cincinnati. I was going 87 in a 55-mile zone and got pulled over. And I didn't have any money or credit cards, and so they put me in jail. But they allowed me to keep my information. So I was in the jail cell. I had it spread out all over the floor. I was taking notes on it. I was all excited. And the cop came in and said, Richard Ryder, one of the other whistleblowers, posted bail for you. He said, Tom, you can go now. And I didn't look up. I said, I'm not done. And he said, I said you could go now. And I said, I'm not done. And then he said, son, if you don't get your ass out of here, you're going to be here a lot longer after you're done. And I snapped out of it. Oh, I'm so sorry. Everything on. But it was quite the, it really was quite the adventure. And that Bechtel study kind of leads to the last anecdote I'd like to share. It's about Admiral Joe Williams. Been the CEO of General Dynamics, and Bechtel brought him in as a heavy hitter to finish this plant the right way. And so Admiral Joe's lawyers called me up one day and said, Admiral Joe wants to have lunch with you. I said, oh, okay. So it's in Cincinnati, we made an appointment and went to his office. He shook out my hand. It's, nice to meet you, sir. He said, I'm not going to touch you, you piece of shit. You little punk. So, you think you know more than the experts do? So, you're Moscow's best friend in Cincinnati. And he went on like this for about 5 minutes. And I remember as I said, this is worse than Mr. Robinson confronting Dustin Hoffman in The Graduate. he's really lost it. So he finished. And it said, you goddamn murderer. So you don't care how many people you kill in this city if you can make your filthy money. And so with people like you here, Moscow doesn't need any more friends. And I went on like that for about 5 minutes. And so when I finished, he looked at me, shook out his hand and said, kid, you're all right. Let's go to lunch and have some chili together. It taught me how you really have to customize your advocacy to the audience. But the Zimmer campaign was a real victory for truth. And the core lesson that it taught me was there's nothing more powerful to challenge abuse of power if you got the truth and solidarity. And if you have both of those, you can do it.